We're ready? Yes. All right. Good morning. Welcome to today's Community Redevelopment Agency Advisory Board meeting. If you wish to address the board regarding an item listed on this agenda, please complete a registration form at the rear of the room and place it in the speaker request box located on the dais prior to consideration of that item. We ask that speakers limit their comments to 3 minutes and that large groups name a spokesperson whenever possible. Thank you for your interest and participation in city government. Roll call.
Member Askar.
Here.
Member Dominic.
Here.
Vice Chair Dondeville.
Here.
Member Fruchon.
Here.
Member Levy. Member Palmer.
Here.
Chair Frederickson.
Here.
Thank you.
All right, so we need to set the agenda. Anita is out today, so we're going to need to continue a few items. So item 6 and item 7, we're going to need to continue. And so my question for the board is, are we able to, in the interest of helping the community, can we go ahead and have a meeting? Will we have quorum for a meeting in June? That was a blackout when we weren't going to be here. I think June 27th looks like a good date, but I'd like to motion.
Is that a Monday?
I believe it's a.
Yeah. Last Monday. So, last Monday? Yes. Okay.
I'm out of town that day, but
I'll be here.
I'll be here.
I'm off for the summer till August 15th, so.
I think we need, do we need 4 for quorum?
I think I'm here.
I know I can be here,
I can be here.
okay?
So we would have 4.
We would have 4,
And Mr.
potentially
Levy, yeah.
Mr. Levy as well, so. How is that? Do we know on the schedule? Is June 27th open?
The morning is open.
Okay,
When
So I'm going to
June
go ahead
20
and jump in and say that as long as you have a quorum that's physically present, you can allow the other members to participate remotely if they have the opportunity to do that. The board should make a finding, or the committee should make a finding that this was an unknown occurrence, that it was not a planned vacation to be out when the meeting. It's because of today's scheduling not being known that we would be rescheduling these things.
okay,
So you have a valid reason to allow them to participate.
okay. And we may want to check with David. I think we can only zoom in 1.
Oh,
It's really difficult when we do remote.
Correct, and we did have this on the schedule, and last meeting, I believe it was agreed that it would be canceled. The last meeting.
so the meeting can go on, and if there's an opportunity for one individual who is not able to physically be here, that may be an option for them to jump.
Yeah, I think we'll have quorum, so, but for me to make that motion, I think we have a public comment from Chris Schukart. I'd like to call on him so he can present, and then we can make a motion. So I believe this has something to do with that motion as well.
Good morning. My name's Christopher Schukart, president of JCS Realty Group. We have 7 properties in the city, 3 of which are within the CRA, and one of which that I wanted to speak to you about today is Victoria Square. It's on the corner of Goodlit and Central. Would you mind if I passed out a material?
That's fine.
Thank you. So the materials that I have presented today is a project I've been working on for the last couple of years, and it's evolved from originally it was going to be a brewery, and now it's going to be a restaurant with a cocktail lounge. We are basically taking out some parking lot, some pervious area, or impervious area, and replacing it with pervious. It's a terrific project. It's within the Naples design district within the CRA, and we're excited to be able to bring this forward. As part of that project, however, we need to purchase or allocate on-street parking. And in order to do on-street parking allocation, we have to come to the CRA Advisory Board to get a recommendation to then go to City Council. We submitted our on-street parking allocation in early May, but what I'm being told is there's a 30-day notice requirement in order to notice the property owners within, I believe, 1,000 feet. So we missed the noticing provision in order to be here today, and if we aren't able to get on the meeting in June, that means we're delayed until the end of August before the CRA Advisory Board, which then pushes back City Council, which then pushes back Design Review Board, and so we end up losing probably 3 or 4 months in addition to what we've already, put forth already today. So my ask was to see if we could possibly get on the agenda for next month's meeting, and if you could do the 27th, which it sounds like you're leaning in that direction, that would be terrific, just because I know staff has to put forth mailing and notices, and so that would give them some extra time to perform those tasks. So I would respectfully ask if we could be on the 27th, and thank you. I did have one other question for County Attorney. So this is an advisory board. Is there still a noticing provision requirement for an advisory board meeting?
There may be, based on the city code. I can't cite the chapter and verse to you right off the cuff, but yeah, it would be something that's above and beyond what's required by Florida statutes. Each municipality is different, so yeah.
So, I mean, just from a outsider looking in, you may want to check and see what those noticing provisions are if other people are coming before the board, and just it's one more procedure that has to be put forth and one more thing that has to be done, and we weren't aware of it, and so we kind of found out the hard way. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chris. So as part of my motion, can I make a motion, or does the board need to make a motion?
It's preferable that another member make the
Okay.
motion.
So, well, to frame this, so we need a motion to continue items 6 and 7, since Anita is not here, as well as grant or add this project to that June 27th meeting for the agenda for June 27th.
I will make that motion.
I'll second that motion.
Roll call?
Member Ascar.
Aye.
Member Dominic.
Aye.
Vice Chair Dondenville.
Aye.
Member Fruchon.
Aye.
Member Levy. Member Palmer.
Aye.
Chair Frederickson.
Yes. All right. So next item is approval of minutes.
I move to approve the minutes from April 25th, 2022.
Second.
Roll call?
Member Ascar.
Yes.
Member Dominic.
Yes.
Vice Chair Dondenville.
Yes.
Member Fruchon.
Yes.
Member Levy. Member Palmer.
Yes.
Chair Frederickson.
Yes. All right, so the one and only item that we're going to discuss or have presented today is item number 5. This is the overview of the 10th Street North landscape and irrigation plans. Jim Hodgson with Parks and Parkway, he's superintendent, will give a brief introduction, and then we'll open for the discussion, and then we're going to do public comment after the presentation now. So,
Okay. Thank you, board members. Jim Hodgson with the Parks and Parkways in Community Services. I'm the superintendent for the Parks and Parkways. Just want to introduce the 10th Street North Landscape Irrigation Plan overview. The CRA engaged the firm of Q. Grady Minor and Associates to prepare installation drawings to refresh landscaping and replace irrigation along 10th Street North and the adjacent avenues. The project is designed to replace plantings and irrigation, and an overview of the landscape and irrigation plans will be presented to you all. I'd like to introduce Richard Chalupa, landscape architect for Grady Minor and Associates. He's here to do the presentation that we had presented to the CRA board.
Thank you, Jim. Good morning, everybody. Again, my name is Richard Chalupa. I will be the head landscape architect of this project. Just want to introduce the rest of the team. Part of this project, landscape designer Thomas Brooks and also irrigation consultant Richard Manley. Both of these individuals are extremely talented and well-respected and have worked on several projects throughout the years here in Naples and Collier County. Just to make note, this is the same team that has successfully completed the design and installations of 3rd Avenue South and the 8th Street improvement projects, which I believe, as many others in the community, that were successful projects, looking at them today, completed. Just want to give a brief background of 10th Street North. We're looking at approximately, the project scope area is a little over 1/3 of a mile. There are 5 avenues within the project scope, 1st through 5th Avenues. Adjacent uses of this area is known to everybody as the Design District, and it has a rich kind of background of commercial, residential, restaurants. You have the Baker Hospital there, and a Baptist church, and there's just a lot of locals and visitors, and it's just a rich area that's very busy and vibrant every day. Utilities, the notable ones we have are overhead utilities, basically on the west side of 10th Street North, one of the most kind of challenging aspects of the project. Another utility to mention is the reclaimed water source, which is also a great feature that is available on 10th Street for this project. Grady Minor did complete the survey along 10th Street, and just to make note that we have essentially about 3 feet plus or minus on the back of sidewalk on the east side of 10th Street that falls within the city's maintenance and basically planting opportunities. So I'm going to go over the existing landscape. The existing landscape, it doesn't take much to notice that it's tired. The existing plants, and mainly the shrubs, ground covers, the planting beds, and even the trees are kind of past their prime. The age and health of a lot of the material is not doing very well. There's a lot of bare spots, dieback, and the landscape is just not lush, full, and rich of color, reminiscent of what you would see throughout the city of Naples. And a lot of that has to do with a problematic irrigation system. The existing irrigation system is old, and it is, again, reached kind of at the end of its lifespan. A lot of it is drip irrigation, and the drip irrigation is not functioning properly. A lot of it has been pinched, crimped. There's water spraying kind of, in different directions to where it's not properly going around the plants. It's just not an efficient system, and it's not making a good use of, the water. The irrigation system right now is running off of reclaimed and potable water. And I'll touch on it a little bit later, but the idea is to kind of streamline the irrigation system. The existing landscape really lacks unity from avenue to avenue and along 10th Street. There's nothing that really ties the landscape together, from the beginning to end of 10th Street and all the avenues. It's really kind of a mixed basket of plantings. Each avenue has a different canopy tree or a palm tree, and the shrubs are not unifying, and that really comes back to a sense of place, the ingress and egress of each avenue. There's nothing that basically tells you that you are arriving, to this design district and this place of gathering that you commonly see throughout the city of Naples. So that's something that we want to aim to change. Again, some of the existing landscape, just want to point out some of these beds. You can see the holes, just barren, nothing. There's, a big hole here in the central island. You see this all throughout 10th Street. Not so bad in the avenues, but within the avenues, there's a problem with root systems like this because of the age of a lot of this plant material. It makes it difficult, very difficult, to plant and dress up these areas for any proposed designs. To touch base on the proposed design, we really want to emphasize and balance the native and non-native species that we use in this design. Here in Florida, we're all about water conservation and water quality, and using native species is very important, and we do a good balance of that. I feel like with some species like firebush, holly, pink muley, ernodia, beach creeper, green buttonwood, and silver buttonwood, all natives that do very well here and are low maintenance. The city's used to maintaining them and will thrive in these conditions. We also are proposing some non-natives too, to add some extra splash of color and contrast, and that's really what we want to achieve with this design, is a native efficient landscape, but also has some interest in colors, and we'll do that with stuff like gold mound and Aechmea, crotons, agapanthus, and tababuya trees for accent. So that kind of touches on the palette. Again, low maintenance and improving the irrigation is the key aspect of this design. We want to take that split irrigation that I was talking about, potable and potable, reclaimed, and make the whole irrigation system on reclaimed water. We have that ability. There's several different timers out there. We want to simplify that, put everything on one single station timer, and make it an easier process for the city to maintain, and basically move forward with that approach. The proposed design does propose to remove some trees. Again, a lot of these trees are past their prime in age. We'll have some photos that elaborate that later in the presentation, but we are proposing to remove 5 mahogany trees, 27 thatch palms, 9 royal palms, 1 cabbage tree, 8 foxtails, and 1 carpentaria palm. We will be relocating some trees, some of the mature Montgomery palms, and those will be relocated along 10th Street. This just highlights some of the trees, mainly the trees that are being relocated. I will note that are in the avenues for the most part. There's not too many trees being moved along 10th Street, but the avenues primarily are where we are proposing to remove trees. And the main reason to remove these trees, other than their age and having difficulties with dealing with cracking pavement and curbs and not being able to plant in those islands, is also we want to introduce shade into these parking areas. Shade is very hard to come by. All those avenues and the shopping experience and dining experience, and even for pedestrians up and down 10th Street North, it's hot, and any bit of shade helps. So we don't want to necessarily remove shade, and it may seem like that because we're taking big mature trees, but we want to introduce new trees that will grow and provide ample shade in the future, but will also not impact the hardscape features and allow us to plant underneath these beds. So I'm not going to go super into detail into this design at this scale because it is hard to really see, but here are just some photos of the existing conditions, and you can see in the colored areas of this landscape design, we're really proposing to remove most of the existing vegetation that is along 10th Street North, and we really want to just kind of simplify it and reintroduce some of those species that I had mentioned earlier. A lot of ground covers will be implemented into this design, just an easier maintaining landscape. You can see here on the ingress and egress of the avenues, goes back to when I touched on unity. This will be a recurring theme, but introducing canopy trees and some plantings that give you that sense of place and unity as you move throughout the project. Here again, you see on 2nd Avenue and again on 3rd, a unity and a repetition that currently isn't there. Along 10th Street North here, really want to dress this area up. This will be a kind of a colorful area along the sidewalk there, introducing some canopy trees as well, some shady lady black olives. So we are introducing some canopy along this sidewalk, which is nice. Some of the relocated palms that I mentioned, and again, just ground covers and making a nice, lush landscape as opposed to, some of these areas that are just died back and looking dilapidated. Again, introducing some more canopy trees, again, that unity in the ingress and egress. Shrubs, same thing, just really cleaning this up and making it a nice landscape that the city of Naples deserves, especially on 10th Street. On the end of the project, we're going to repeat very much the same plant palette that from Central along near 1st Avenue. Again, just to tie everything back full circle, to strengthen the unity and repetition. So that will be on 1st Avenue. There's not much going on 1st Avenue because there's a lack of irrigation. There's no existing sleeving there. So we're not proposing much. There are some large existing mahogany trees, and we want to keep those, and most of them fall on private property, so we're not touching those. But there's no irrigation here, and the only really option would be to do some directional boring, and we just didn't feel like that was something that was part of the project scope. So most of the avenue work, 2nd through 5th, this is where we're proposing to remove existing trees. You can see some of these root systems on the mahoganies and the bare plantings underneath. The pictures further on will show the damage of some of these curbs, but this is where we're wanting to introduce some of the new canopy trees. 3rd Avenue, same thing. Buttonwood trees, ground covers, dress all this up. This will have a nice new look of natives and non-natives. And the same thing can be said for 4th and 5th Avenue. 5th Avenue is a little different. 5th Avenue has royal palms, and royal palms are the street tree for 5th Avenue. We wanted to keep that plant palette the same and not really make that drastic change. I think 5th Avenue can be a touchy subject, but some of these royals are very mature, and the root systems are really lifting up the entire plant beds, making it nearly impossible to have any kind of successful ground covers and shrubbery in that area. So what we are proposing is to remove the existing royals and redress those islands, excavate all that root system, bring in new soil, and make those islands fresh to where they can be planted. And we will be proposing to replace these islands with new royal palms, not to take away from the natural streetscape that is there currently, and the city street trees. So that will conclude the presentation. I'll open it up for questions.
Just, I have a quick question, and then we'll go through the board here. Back to those 5th Avenue North Royal Palms, so you do plan on planting, what you remove, you plan on putting in new?
Yes.
What size?
I'd have to look at the specs, but I believe 10 or 12 foot clear trunk. So they're decent sized trees, but they're probably half of what they are currently.
Right, okay, but they'd they would still be high enough where they're not blocking signage.
Correct, yes.
And
Yeah.
pedestrian issues and
Right.
things like that. Okay. Casey? I'm gonna, well, let me do this. We do have a public comment on this. And I would like to probably have Quimby make her public comment, and then we can ask questions of Quimby and you on that. That's okay?
Is it okay if I come up here too, because I've got some slides? Thank you, Mr. Chair. Okay, and I think, all right, okay. Let me just grab my glasses, sorry. This whole nonsense of glasses just happened recently. I'm having a hard time getting used to it. Okay, I'm Quenby Tyler. I have a business at 985 Fifth Avenue North in the CRA district. As some of you might know, I used to serve on the CRAB for the previous 4 years. So what I want to just discuss today is, in principle, some of the items that are listed in the in this design packet have some merits, but there are some that I really concern me. I just wanted to go back in time just a little while, because some of you were on the board with me over those years where we were talking about landscaping, and we're going back probably about 3 or 4 years where we've been talking about improving the landscape in the design district. So, but in all those meetings, and I attended just about every one except probably one meeting I missed, in all of those meetings, I don't recall any of us ever saying anything about ripping out large trees or mature trees. There was no discussion of that ever. It wasn't on our minds. It wasn't on our hearts, and it just wasn't necessary. So all we ever really talked about was improving the flower beds, freshening up the district, making it look a little, getting rid of some of those leggy shrubs and the like. So, and at that time we were given a general guesstimate by Community Services that it would cost around $250,000 if I recall correctly, and that was minus the irrigation, of course, but that was just to sort of replant some of these beds and freshen everything up, which sounded pretty reasonable, and therefore it was placed on the budget. Grady Minor at that time was then awarded the contract for design services. So now we fast forward about 2 years, and here we are. I mean, when we got started with this whole landscaping project, we were talking about low-hanging fruit and dealing with some of these beautification projects that could be undertaken before we went ahead with this master plan. So it could be done in conjunction with the master plan or beforehand, so that we could at least make the area look prosperous, viable, and in keeping with the brand of Naples. So, but this right here, this design proposal, in my mind, is Exhibit A of how you turn a project that should have probably taken a maximum of 6 months to complete from start to finish into going on now 3 years, and at a cost that I guarantee you is going to be much, much more than $250,000. So with that, we spoke about replacing these leggy, scrubby shrubbery, and I feel like that's something that even the city's own landscaping crew could have probably taken care of in due time, and it didn't really require this massive expenditure of design budget. And also, not only that, but the scope of work has increased to remove some 54 trees, which we never talked about removing a single tree, let alone 54. So talk about killing a fly with a cannon blast. I mean, this is just major overkill for some of what we were talking about. But back to the trees. I mean, who wanted these large trees removed? And what's the purpose of it? So I wanted to just look at these trees real quick. The ones in particular, obviously, the picture that's pulled up on the screen right now features some mahogany trees, which are very beautiful. They lend themselves, old established trees lend themselves to a quaint and eclectic and unique beauty of an older district, of an older shopping district. It's everything that the people love about this district. So I may need help getting this, let's see here, how do I fast, I see. Up and down, I got you, thank you, thank you. Okay, so if I go to here, those are on 10th Street North, by the way. These are the ones that are in the public, actually, that's not public trees. Those are ones that are on private property. But I just wanted to show you this to illustrate the fact that when you get trees that are this mature, as opposed to replacing them with smaller ones, regardless of where they are, these ones have grown beyond, the canopies have grown beyond the visibility of the signage. So you want larger trees, and you want these established trees because they've now grown to a level where you can prune them and keep all that foliage out of the way of the visibility, plus you're providing shade. So to replace them with another shade-bearing tree that's shorter and equally as messy, because sometimes the mahogany trees are going to shed, whatever, but they're both going to provide shade. I would suggest anytime you can keep a mahogany tree that's established, you might as well. I will tell you, too, I used to be in this building. This has gone through many hurricanes. These trees have survived the last 3 hurricanes that we had, and I can tell you, I can attest that they were not a problem. So some of these trees that are in the district have weathered very well through all of our storms. This is also just an illustration of mahogany trees that are in front of signage that are faring very well. Fortunately, these are not in public right-of-way. Otherwise, these would probably be on the chopping block too. And I'm sure that the owner very much enjoys these trees, and we certainly enjoy looking at them. So those would be ones that I'm very glad are staying, but they're only staying because they're on private property. And then here's the real contention I have with the worst part of this design plan, I feel, is the subject of removing these royal palms on 5th Avenue North. I've taken sort of a general poll and general consensus of the district. Nobody's for this. Everybody hates the idea. They think it's wasteful. They think these trees need to stay. They're perfectly healthy. I've spoken to 3 landscapers and 1 arborist, and they've all said that these trees are well within their life expectancy. You're talking trees that can last 80, 100 years in some cases when they're well maintained. These ones are probably, from the estimates that I've heard anything from as young as 15 years to as old as 25 years. These trees don't need to go. There's nothing wrong with them. They don't pose a health risk. They don't pose a physical safety threat. None of them look diseased. They're all in perfectly good health. And if we're worried about these palm fronds falling down on cars or anything like that as these trees get bigger, Mr. Shukart had told me that on 5th Avenue they very successfully managed a program where they zip tie these palm fronds so that they can be taken down in a controlled manner as and when is needed. So that's not an issue. And as far as like the plant beds go, are we talking about sacrificing trees so that we can put some petunias in a bed now? Is that where we're headed? So I don't buy the idea of ripping out beautiful, handsome royal palms that are perfectly healthy so that we can put some plantings in the bed. There's other ground cover. There's other solutions that are very beautiful where we can keep these trees, keep the beds, and have something that's maybe low maintenance. The only thing I would suggest, and in fact this was another great idea from Mr. Shukart at this time, if we want to entertain landscaping here, maybe we should also include some uplighting in some of these trees too, to just highlight just how beautiful and handsome they really, really are. But the other thing is, who really benefits from removing these trees? That's the question. Who benefits from removing them? I maintain the only people that are really benefiting from removing these trees are the people that are digging them out and the people that are selling you the new ones to replace them with. So, where are we headed here? And as far as like uniformity goes, when you're talking about putting in a bunch of black olive trees that are everywhere in the city right now, how about we leave some of these lovely old trees that are already in our district? We're not asking for cookie cutter urbanism in that area. This isn't what we want. In fact, the idea of replacing them with things that are in uniform with the rest of the city is actually the opposite of what we want to see preserved in this community. This is not how you retain the eclectic, unique character of the district that people find so charming. So, and I'm about to wrap it up here, but my main question is this really how we want to spend CRA funds? We've got a lot of expenses right now in the city in CRA, between the parking garage and other garage proposals, between lighting and many other things that are on the docket, First Avenue South improvements. We're talking about spending hundreds of thousands of dollars probably just to rip out trees that are perfectly fine. It's very unpopular. It's just an unpopular idea. So by approving this design as presented, you would be green lighting something that is not only fiscally wasteful It's ecologically wasteful, and you would also be in direct opposition to the stated vision and wishes of the community. I urge you to please not go forward with recommending this design as it stands. And lastly, I also provided for record a petition that involved business owners and property owners on the street of Fifth Avenue. Not a one even thought it was a remotely good idea to rip out those trees. In fact, they all thought it was ridiculous and wasteful. So I have signatures for you there, and I'm also submitting the original for public record too. So with that, if you have any questions, I'm here at your disposal. And I thank you for the extra time, Chair Frederickson.
Thank you. So I'd like to ask Richard to come up so we could, I have a few questions, but I'd like to start with Casey and work our way around here for any questions we have on your presentation.
Thank you for the presentation. I do have a few questions, and I would like to echo the lady's case in point. I do share your sentiment. I believe in preserving wherever one can preserve, and I think tearing down trees is a very touchy subject. It is for me, unless there's a hazard or a real case in point in doing so. I would ask if there's a solution to continue the beautification plan around with the trees that we have in place, and working with what we've got there. If it ain't broken, don't fix it. I have one question though on this, on the 10th Street. Does this start from Central to 5th Avenue North, this portion that we're discussing?
Yes.
Okay.
Central to 5th.
Okay, thank you. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
David?
Okay, I have a few things. I want to also go back in time a bit, because it has been like 3 years or so that we've been talking about improvements in the design district. And when I was president of the design district, it was one important thing that came up over and over from members about what we could do to beautify the neighborhood, identify low-hanging fruit, easily accomplishable things that would sort of change the look quickly. And I know that I came into this room a few times, and we've got money allocated to start investing in some plants. I agree with what Quenby's saying 100%. I was in a meeting recently with members of the design district and also with the president of the current president of the design district, and they are very much hopeful that any landscaping improvements will happen during the summer. So when snowbirds and when season kicks off next fall, that things will be done, that there will be improvements made, and I'm hoping that that's the case. When I see this presentation, it excites me that we're finally paying attention to the neighborhood and there are new plantings being planned, but I guess my question is where are we at with a schedule? And the original budget that was proposed clearly is not going to cover this plan. So is the new thought that this is going to be done in a series of phases? What will actually be done during the summer as mentioned, so that then when residents or when guests and snowbirds come back in the fall, things will be visibly different. I don't agree with taking down mature trees. So can we start with the schedule, and then I guess, does this plan fall in line with the budget? And if it doesn't, then what does that do to the schedule?
David, I can answer that question for you. The plan has gone out, started the bid process with purchasing, it hasn't gone out to bid. Our anticipation was to have something come back to you in August so we could start planting in September. The reason we got to this point is because it was very difficult to find areas where we could just do a plug-in of new plantings and not address the irrigation. The irrigation is a big problem throughout this whole area that we're proposing to redo. And in order to get that irrigation in line, we really need to rip everything out, for the most part, everything out, so we can get back down to where the irrigation ties in and start coming up with new irrigation from that point. So the irrigation is, I believe the last installation was 2007, so it's very aged. And with the root structures that we have in place right now, with some of these larger trees and palms, it would require extensive trenching to even try to discover where these tie-in points for irrigation is. But to get back on your schedule plan and budget, we still feel we're within budget. We're trying to bring in place, tying in the irrigation, like we said, of potable. There's like 2 potable meters out there now that feed 1 avenue each. It's really not conducive to what we do throughout the city. So we're gonna tie everything back in to reuse water. But I don't know if that answers your question fully, but we intend to hopefully award a contract, like I said, in August, bring it to the CRA board for approval, and then begin construction shortly after that.
So I guess the question is or hypothetically, if the majority of us feel like we don't want to take these existing trees down, is there a plan B that we could still accomplish change, achieve beautification without going to such drastic measures, and still be able to accomplish it in a reasonable amount of time, so that then it falls in line with the momentum of season, and that when people come back, they are seeing some change?
So we, in the bid schedule that we have put out, during our last CRA meeting, they had questioned, with the 4110 master plan in place and an electricity upgrade plan in place for this whole area as well. Could we break it out, maybe just do some avenues and not do 10th Street, or do 10th Street and not the avenues? So we have it bid out that way. So if we can award it for just 10th, we can award it for just the avenues, we can award it for both. It's all going to depend on how it comes back to us on the bid, what we get for pricing from contractors. And I haven't been able to discuss with Anita yet on how she wants to move forward once we get to that point, but we're not at that point yet. So I think it answers your question that we have some flexibility.
Okay.
I'm wondering if you could tell me if this plan is adopted, will there be more trees than what there is now?
Yes.
Okay. That's good. Secondly, I'm always reticent to second-guess people who know a lot more about trees and landscaping, other than I like them or I don't like them. And I wondered, I'm suspecting that some of the reason that you're proposing taking these out is because, I mean, if you look at some of these trees, I've seen them on the street, they look like they're struggling. I'm not sure about the ones on Fifth Avenue North, because I never looked at them in that way. But if you go up 10th Street, it seems like they'd be happier in a different place than perhaps struggling for water and competing with cement and the rest of it. I'm expecting that some of the trees you're proposing to take out are either diseased or old or not where they're supposed to be. Was that part of your factoring it in?
Absolutely. I mean, we definitely looked at each tree individually and holistically. And a lot of the mahoganies, which I think there's only 5 of them that we're proposing to take out, going in, they probably were not the best specimen caliber tree to begin with. The structure and leader system of those trees are not reminiscent of a Florida fancy #1 tree that we would be proposing to replace it with. So yes, all that was looked at and assessed, for sure.
If I could just add to that, the 3 mahoganies that are on 4th Avenue North that are proposed to come out, they are actually under power lines. There's power lines on that side that are along Nucera's business area. New regulations, I say new, only because we've just started to have to adapt to it, but it's been in place for a little while. You know, you cannot plant that type of tree under the power lines anymore throughout the state of Florida, due to hurricane restrictions, power restrictions. So if we were to lose those at any point for some reason, you would never see the mahogany go back. Now that would say, well, why do we want to take them down then? And the only reason we're looking to take them down, ideally, the first reason is because of the plant space that they're taking up. The roots. I have other pictures that I can share with you if you haven't seen the trees yourself, but they're cracking the curbing. The planting space is very small, and the roots are above the soil level. The roots go over some of the existing irrigation lines, right over them. And like I said, the power lines are subject to the trimming of the lines every year. They have large mahogany nuts that drop on parking. They're right over parking spaces. So they have a lot of stuff that's disadvantaged, so.
I lived on West Boulevard for a while, and alongside the property on which I lived, there were about 8 mahogany trees that were under power lines, and once or twice a year, FPL or somebody would come through and just tear the heart out of the tree, and I felt like I could hear the tree screaming because and they looked awful. I mean, at the end of the day, they were shaped like this, and there was nothing in the middle.
Yeah.
And so I understand that. I'm wondering, can you tell me, are you the firm that designed the landscaping on 10th Street south of Central also?
I was not involved in that project.
Okay, because that turned out to be very,
Well, Grady Minor, they did the 3rd Avenues, and it kind of where it stretches out onto 10th on the
Yes.
corners. They did do that landscape design. The most recent landscaping that took place on 10th Street from 3rd Avenue South to Central, our in-house staff did that.
was
did that
very
work.
pretty. It's very
And we
nice.
worked with the local businesses there to kind of get an idea of what they were looking for as well. And a lot of that stuff was aged as well. We were able to do some upgrading of the irrigation at the same time,
Yeah.
but we had larger planting space than we do on the
Your
north
comment
end.
about the irrigation is you can tell when that area was done, the part that is was able to be irrigated and the one that isn't, and the one that isn't able to be irrigated is just,
Yeah.
it's dying.
It is, it's a struggle.
Thank you, that's it for me.
Two quick questions. One, you mentioned that part of the. Microphone, please. Excuse me. So two quick questions. So first, you stated that the part of the reason for the tree removal was to access the irrigation that the mains, I guess, that would reside below the root ball. What kind of shape is the main lines in at the moment? Are we tying into something that is going to last as long as the work we're doing, or should the mains be under consideration?
We're pretty certain that the mains are in sleeves, so that's a bonus, and plus, we don't know where the sleeves are. We know where the sleeves should be. We have to identify and locate them in the project. I feel confident that the main lines are in good shape. We have never experienced a large main line break or concern. It's mostly been zone line from that main line.
And then, Richard, I was going to ask you, was there any rebuttal to the comments that Ms. Tyler made that you'd like to address to us?
No, I mean, I definitely understand the point of view and the perspective. At the end of the day, I can see your and many of the other voices and respect that perspective. It's an opinion at the end of the day, I think. And I can see it go either way, honestly.
So let's assume
can
it falls-
justify both parties.
So let's assume that it goes that way and the mature trees are remaining, the ones that are in good health. We touched on Plan B earlier. What would it actually look like?
Yeah, there would definitely be a Plan B, and to think about, obviously, different understory and how we treat those islands. What we're proposing right now wouldn't work, but we would have to probably trim it down to more of a ground cover. It would be less beautiful, for sure, but you'll get to keep your trees, you know? You may have issue with your curbing that you have to consider, but that's, you know, kind of what the situation falls in. We can come up with a solution that can keep them, but you may be looking at it, you know, down the road, saying, gosh, we should have taken those trees out, or I wish we could have something else here to make these planting islands a little bit more vibrant. But yeah, they could stay.
So the Royals on Fifth are one piece. What's your opinion of those?
On Fifth?
Yes.
My opinion?
Clearly, you've got them scheduled for removal.
Yeah, I have them scheduled for removal. I would like to have more flexibility in those planting beds, and, you know, reestablish root barrier in those islands to where the root systems didn't have much impact on the actual curbing and the hardscapes. Obviously, irrigation is part of the work there too, to look at, but I have them scheduled to remove. That's kind of the way I'm going to stay.
Okay. And in terms of the irrigation, is that a manageable prospect with the existing Royals in place?
There would have to be a discovery of staying with that type of plan. We didn't go into this with that plan. Honestly, we don't know where the tie-in points are. It's actually Fifth Avenue irrigation is a little odd in a way that it's kind of fed from River Park, actually. The way things were designed and put together back in 2007. So it would be something that we would have to rediscover and reimagine on just that avenue.
And we touched really in a very limited way on irrigation, although it was part of our package. So you said putting all of this on one clock for service reasons?
Correct.
Are our mains interconnected, or are we?
Mains are all, yes, the mains are all there. The only part of this project, there's only one under boring that we have to go from one side of 10th to the other side of 10th in one location.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
My first comment has to do with, I received an email this morning at 6:40 a.m. Addressed to Anita Jenkins, myself, and a copy went to Mr. McCabe, the chair of the CRA. And I don't know what Ms. Jenkins' intention was with this letter from Maria Mayer, but it dealt with this issue. And she has about 5 paragraphs where she goes into her feelings as not a business person in the area, but as a customer of that area and a frequent visitor of that area, and in particular Fifth Avenue. So my query first is, did anybody else get this? So Anita didn't pass it on to anybody else. I feel that it's a public comment that the lady wanted to make, knowing that she might not be able to make it here in time to make the comment. She sent it to Anita, which I assumed Anita was going to read into the record. So I don't know what to do with it. So I
Yeah, I'm
looked
not
to the chair.
sure. I'll probably look to council. Usually we get those in advance for review.
True. It's not a long email, though, is it? It's fairly short. So
Nope,
if
I'll be
it
glad
could
to
be
give it to you, let you read
It
it.
could be read into the record and then just placed with the information.
Well, I think, okay. We gonna read it into the record?
Yes.
Okay.
It reads, Dear Ms. Jenkins, I was hoping to attend the CRAP meeting today in relation to item 5A. Unfortunately, I don't think I will get there in time for public comment, so I'm writing to you in the hope that you can either read my email or raise the concerns I have in relation to the removal of the trees shown in the plan. The CRA requested that Grady Minor and Associates prepare installation drawings for irrigation and landscaping, which they have duly done. However, from looking at them, I am concerned that the removal of 54 trees seems rather overzealous and costly. Many of the trees do not appear to be dead or dying. Following Hurricane Irma, the city spent a considerable amount of money replacing the trees across Naples, and I cannot understand why they really believe it is necessary to start on a program of removing perfectly healthy trees and then replacing them with new ones. The new plan for the design district are exciting, and landscaping is an important part of it. The new ground cover planting proposed in the plan with color around the base of the trees would make a major difference, as there are many barren areas, and the plans for the irrigation appear to be a good investment. However, I believe that the Grady Minor landscape architect needs to justify the plan in relation to some of the trees. Some removal may be necessary to fit in with the Naples tree planting program, particularly in relation to non-native trees, but the removal of healthy ones may not sit well with residents, and I would have thought they would work around the current trees, which has the added benefit of reducing cost of the project. As always, thank you for your time and consideration. Kind regards, Maria Meyer, Bayfront.
So if I can ask some questions then of,
Right, well, the
Gentlemen.
one thing that I just want to
Okay.
address there, is it 54 trees?
Uh,
It didn't look like that many, but
Yeah.
it is.
a lot
Okay.
of-
It's palms also.
Okay,
As far as canopy trees, I believe, he had the number.
No,
on
as
that
far as
slide.
his canopy trees, 5 mahoganies. 8, 5, yeah, it's 5 mahogany trees. The rest, the 27 thatch palms, which are on, I believe, 2nd Avenue. That's where a bulk of and they're planted in clusters right now. They're like, 3 clusters in an island. That's where a bulk of them are. And then the 8 foxtail palms, I believe, on 3rd Avenue. which
okay.
are
Go ahead,
non-native.
George.
and if you could finish that, how many on Fifth Avenue are going to be removed?
5th Avenue's 9 royal palms.
So 9,
10,
8,
yeah.
5, and 27, whatever
Nine
that
royal
adds
palms
up to,
would be out.
51? Okay, so she was close.
I think there's, yeah, I don't know.
Okay, so she was off by 3 to put that bed to rest.
It could have been in our paperwork as 54, though.
So my first question, I think, is to Mr. Hodgson.
Yes.
In response to Ms. Dominic's question, you said that there was a portion of one of the avenues that was done by city staff, the design and the plantings that were done. Can you refresh me what that was?
Yes, that was a section of 10th Street South,
Okay,
not one of the avenues.
okay. And 10th Street South from where to where?
Basically from First Avenue south to 3rd Avenue South.
Okay. And that,
And that was an area that we had targeted prior to Hurricane Irma, actually, to start getting.
that was already kind of
A
in the
lot of the
plans?
old landscaping, like the juniper and stuff, was really old.
All right. And was the city arborist involved in that, Heather Shields?
Yes,
Okay. Do you consider her to be pretty knowledgeable in
exactly, yes.
trees and plants
I'm
and stuff?
I'm also a certified arborist.
Okay.
And we have another certified arborist on staff.
Okay, I didn't realize that.
Yeah.
Thank you. Has she been consulted at all in regards to this whole
Yes,
thing that's going on?
yes, everything that's been involved with the city trees, city street trees, yes.
Okay, and are the palms on Fifth Avenue North, are those on city property?
They're correct, yes. They're part of our street plan.
And has she said that those trees are dying?
No,
Past their
we never
life?
proposed that everything was dying in this plan at all. It's more directed to the planting space that they're in. In order to do improvements, the root structure needs to be taken out. So it's not so much that the tree or palm is diseased or dead or dying, it's more for these locations with the royals on Fifth and the mahoganies that are on the avenues, is because of the root space.
Okay, well, particularly the ones on Fifth Avenue. What's going to happen when those are taken out? Where does that tree go?
It gets removed, so it would come down in sections of wood. They would not be,
Okay, the tree's not going to be saved.
it's not gonna be saved, correct.
There's no way to save it.
There's way to save royal palms. I would say these are probably more difficult because there's no root space to grab from. But we did pricing back on the 8th Street project. I say we, the city, we got pricing to relocate the royal palms that were taken out along the school, the Gulfview Middle School. And we can buy 10 palms in the price that we can relocate one.
Of the same size as the one you've removed?
Not of the same size, no. In our 10 to 12, 14-foot clear trunk for a new planting. And you do not get a warranty period at all when you relocate a palm. Nobody will warranty that palm for you.
But you get a warranty with a new tree.
Correct.
And I guess the big hang-up has to do with the fact that the planter box that each of those trees sits in right now has been uplifted by the roots. Consequently, if you were to plant anything in there, I think you said there were some things you could plant in there that would be fine with that upswelling of the ground.
Yeah, it definitely limits your palette. There's just no substance. There's no, depth of the planting bed. It's a solid mass of
No
roots.
soil.
Yeah, there's
Basically,
no soil.
there's no soil to work with. Everything is roots.
And unlike my wife, when she plants something in a thing that's this big and decides it started to grow up, she can put more dirt in it or put it in a bigger pot. Can you put it in the bigger pot?
Right.
Can you make a bigger pot around that tree? Each one of those trees?
You could, yes, but it would require us to take up more parking spaces there, and then that's another approval process that we did not propose.
Yeah, that'd be the only way.
I don't have any other questions at this time.
All right. I have a-
Mr. Chairman, I just had one quick one. and
Okay.
That is, are there city liability issues for the city with respect to tripping or falling over these exposed roots or these broken hardscape around it? Was that pursued at all?
That's a good question. Was not discovered at the time we did this plan, but it's something that we could check on with risk management. We do have many trip and falls throughout the city. I know that. I'm not sure if they actually relate to this area.
Generally, as far as the liability, if it's a known risk to the city, is when potentially there could be some liability, potentially. And risk management is really good about, I personally know that once something is reported, they get with either your department or a different department, and they address that potential hazard.
All right, I have a few things. My colleagues have covered most of it, but my first one was this, this was like a design build. It was designed with the budget in mind, and you answered that it was. And I think that kind of parlays onto these palms. And you guys are much more versed and professionals in your industry, and I trust your judgment. What I'm hearing is, and I just want to make sure, so as far as kind of pros and cons, it's much more cost prohibitive and design prohibitive to try to reuse those palms. And the reason being is the damage they're causing and the existing roots. You're going to have to give something up. If we leave the palms, you're not going to get any colorful groundscape. It's going to have to be very minimal. And I think it's important to point out, I understand this, I don't know how many people on my board do. When you replant, you're gonna put root barrier in, which means that's gonna hold that root system from damaging curbs and asphalt, and allow for colorful plantings below. That's the purpose of, the main purpose of this is, in your assessment, the root system has completely taken over these planter beds. So option A, make bigger planter beds, which is a completely different scenario and very cost prohibitive. Or remove the most cost, the most cost conscious is to remove these palms, put root barrier in, and allow us to have that beautification. It sounds like if we leave this existing, the beautification is minimized, and continued damage to the curbs and asphalt. Was that kind of your assessment?
That's
On that.
exactly what our assessment was, or has been. If you go out there now, you'll see remnants of the old root barrier. You'll actually see it around the mahoganies, and you'll see it around some of these palms where it's just kind of lifted itself away from the curbing, or it's deteriorated. Root barrier protection is a lot more viable than it was back in 2007 or earlier than that. But you'll actually find that out there now. So they were installed with root barrier at that time.
And that kind of parlays, I was asking kind of pros and cons, and that's kind of the notes I took here, is that this isn't done in a mind of wasteful, let's just tear it out because we can and put something new in. There's a lot of thought behind this process, and much more expense trying to locate irrigation and repair it, minimize beautification because now you're limited with a root system that's completely taken over the island, so we can't do what we'd like to do to beautify the street. And then the cost-wise, I mean, it sounds like those kind of were the driving. I'm just trying to recap kind of what I've put together from your presentation. Is that kind of the direction?
It's a good recap, yeah.
Okay. The one thing I did really like, and I don't know if do we have any landscape lighting plans, or is that not part of your scope at this time?
It wasn't a part of this scope
Okay.
at this time. Just the existing light poles that are on the avenues now, and there's a few on 10th Street, but those are to remain, and
Right.
that's all that we looked
I
at.
thought that was a good addition. I mean, and maybe a middle ground where, because obviously we want to worry about, and I'm a business owner in the district as well, not on Fifth, but that may be a kind of a give and take if it's viable. Maybe if they do lose the trees, and Royals are beautiful to uplight anyways, I'm sure that would add to the expense, but it may be worth it.
Yeah.
If we're able to replant those and that now they're all the same size, it gives you a beautiful view down the street. If they're uplit, I think it may be a give and take or a conversation, because we do want to be open with the community and find a happy meeting ground.
I can have the conversation with Anita and
I mean, even
have
with
us
the
look
with the
into that.
bid, I mean, I don't think it would hurt just to add on, hey,
Exactly.
what are we looking at to uplight these? And if it's possible, and what that additional cost might be. I think it'd be worth the exercise.
We can certainly do that.
And then my last one, and it's not really, I mean, I guess it would be streets and stormwater as well as parks and parkways. Or maybe the 4110 master plan. I have a huge issue with these islands on 10th. It's very dangerous for pedestrians and bicyclists. It bottlenecks. And then impatient vehicles try to pass a bike or someone walking right at the island. And so it's really dangerous. Has there been any conversation about just getting rid of those islands and making the street a little wider there to accommodate bicyclists? And there's a few islands. I know it does slow traffic a little bit, but I think the trade-off of safety versus, I mean, I know slowing traffic and maybe that's part of the master plan, maybe some parking bumps, but
Are you speaking of the parking bumps or the islands that are actually in between the two lanes?
the islands that are in between,
Okay.
one right between 5th and 4th, I know that one, and I think there's another one
There is
just on the
another
other
one
side.
south of that. Yeah.
But those are a really big hazard for especially kids and adults riding, tons of people ride their bikes now from Lake Park or anywhere with the Greenway, and they connect through and they ride down 10th. And it's really dangerous. There's not a lot of viable options besides, you know, the parents get in the front and back and kind of get over a little bit to make sure nobody's going to get too close to the kids.
I have shared the plans that we had Grady Minor do for us with the landscape architect for the firm that is doing the 4110 master plan. I've had some conversations with him. I haven't reviewed all of the plan, the 4110 master plan. I think it's 76 pages or something. I will look back and see if there's anything addressing the islands that are along 10th Street. You know, we have some on the south end too.
Right.
But as far as the, I know they also have some plans for sidewalk treatment and so forth, so.
It's just something I wanted to bring up because it's important to think about. There's no point in having this as part of that scope if we're going to remove them.
Right, right.
Or we're going to make us figure out a solution there. But that may be another kind of deduct option or something where, you know, spend good money after bad to put something nice there, and then in a year it's going to be torn out again.
And the CRA board had the same concerns as well.
Okay.
You know, that's, after our meeting, we did start having the conversation with the firm for the 4110 master plan because of that. Wanted to see if we could all make sure that everything's dovetailed in together. Hopefully, we're not doing a lot of work for naught to have it come back through and tear it all out again, or redesign it to where, you know, we have to remove a lot of stuff that was put in. So, you know, we're looking to approve the plan and hopefully get some pricing, and then I think we're all going to find out where we're going to go from here.
So really from here, the next steps are you're waiting on bids for this work, and then this will be presented again.
It hasn't been advertised for bid yet. We're still in the position right now where it's in purchasing department and going through their calculations, what they need to do.
And then once there's numbers next to these items, these will be coming before us and the CRA again, correct?
Correct.
So that at that time, we could probably make some more detailed,
Correct.
with educated numbers next to these items, we can make some more detailed decisions
That's
or
correct.
recommendations for
Right.
the CRA.
Correct.
Okay. Sure.
Thank you, Chair Frederickson, for granting me one final comment. Quimby Tyler, 985 Fifth Avenue North. I just want you to picture Fifth Avenue North. I know many of you have driven down it. The trees are very stately. They lend to the personality of that street. And I don't want to conflate the value of a good-looking plant bed with the stature of a stately, mature, gorgeous tree that is the reason why that street looks distinctive, is because the height of the tree and the nature of the age of those trees. When they took out the palm trees at 8th Street, I believe they did a disservice to the 8th Street by taking those large palms, much as the iconic road is. I don't know what the street is in Los Angeles where they have those very, very, very tall palm trees. Different palm tree, I know, but it's been photographed a million times over because it is so compelling visually. To get rid of those visually compelling trees in favor of being able to plant some kind of ground cover, I think is a tremendous waste of a beautiful tree that I think that we regret. And only to replace it with the same tree of a smaller version of it, are we going to be getting to this level where every time we get a tree to a certain height, we decide it's time to cut it down just because we're worried about the curbs. The curbs can be repaired. The curbs can maybe be increased in height just a little bit, not made bigger, but maybe increased in height so that it retains the soil. There's other options. There are so many other remedies for being able to put plants in these beds. I just would really, really urge you to save these trees. I think it's going to be a hot button issue in the future. I think City Council is probably going to hear from a lot of people who want to save those trees. It makes no sense at all. It's a waste of CRA funds. Leave them, uplight them, don't uplight them, but just find another way to decorate those beds. Those trees are very enjoyable visually to look at, and it's a horrendous waste. So with that, thank you for allowing me that final word.
Thank you. And one more question for Mr. Hodgson. I don't want to keep adding to the plate, but it's not hard to do when you're getting ready to go out for bid. It may not be a bad idea, and I think it might be within staff to be able to do that. If you have an alternative number, so we can make an educated decision or an educated recommendation on how much more does it cost to leave those trees? So how much more in curbing, asphalt repairs, larger beds, what are we losing, how many parking spots? What is the additional cost to leaving those trees versus, because I see it on both sides, right? I understand now we're gonna have a root barrier, we're not gonna have to repair curbs later on down the road and asphalt and get a better planting bed. However, we have beautiful, nice royal palms and we need to understand. I know for me as a business owner, I need numbers next to things to make decisions. And so,
Yes.
in theory, yeah, it's great to leave the trees and we don't want to cut any trees down, but what is the cost for that?
Okay.
So I think that would be helpful, I think, for the CRA and us to have some kind of financial number next to, or even Richard, if you did a pros and cons on, what are we gaining by something more simple for the community and for the boards to say, okay, we're gaining this, we're losing this. Here's the financial ramifications or estimated financial ramifications of each. And that makes a lot more educated guess or decision for the city to make. And
Similar like a cost analysis of.
yeah, it wouldn't hurt. I mean, because I know it's not as simple as let's save the trees. Well, what does that mean? How much is it going to cost to repair all the constantly repairing the sidewalks? We have no ground cover now. It's going to constantly push out, or a bigger planter. Well, now we just lost 2 parking spaces, and parking's a big issue that we all know of. So I think those are important things to take into consideration
Okay.
for that.
Okay, we can come back with that.
Can we piggyback on that? So I totally agree. I would love to see the different breakouts of the different bids, but then also with the different breakouts of the bids, what visually does that look like? So if we did decide to leave the trees, what would be the best realistic visual presentation that can happen if that choice is made? Because I think people understand numbers, but then people also want to know what it's going to look like.
Right, right.
Yeah.
Understood.
Okay. Do we need to make a motion or anything like that? I mean, I think our notes are on video and on file, so.
I'm not aware of one. I'm not sure if you know, Ally, what Anita's plan was.
Let's see.
She hasn't texted me or called me.
So the agenda
AGM.
memo does talk about discussion, which you've done.
Right.
And provide any recommendations to the full CRA, if you
I
have
think we've done
any.
that
I think
in
you've
our
done that,
comments as
yes.
well, so, so we'll move on. To any further, items 6 and 7 have been continued, so do we have any other public comment, not on this issue, but anything else? There's no one else there, so obviously not. Announcements and correspondence, do we have any? No, and we're missing Anita today, so. So do I hear a motion to adjourn?
Could I just ask one question?
Sure.
Was there anything on her report to us that's timely that needs to be, at least our answer to the CRA has to be heard prior to our next meeting? Because they're going to meet in the interim.
As I understood it, this item was the one that was pressing that we did today. And we've decided now to have that June 27th meeting, which was, we were not going to have a meeting next month, and now we are.
Okay, but I mean, they're not going to rewrite the bylaws for us in the interim between now and our
I
next
don't know, but we
meeting.
could take a very quick look at her report.
I'm just looking down on page 5.
Yes, the first item she has on there is the 4110 master plan. The next steps are the consultant and the staff will be finalizing the master plan and priority recommendations. And on June the 9th, DPZ will be presenting the final master plan to the CRA board for consideration, so that appears to be informational to you. The next is the housing affordability study. At this point, the CRA will be providing staff direction on any further initiatives or budget items. The next item she has is her Gulf Shore Playhouse Garage project. Just again, informational, on May the 18th, CRA and the City Council, they did approve the design concept. And in December of 2022, the City Council will be reviewing and hopefully approving the complete design. The next one is the Fifth Avenue South Streetscape and Sugden Theater Plaza improvements. On May 11th, this is informational. The Planning Advisory Board recommended approval of the Fifth Avenue South Overlay District. And in June, the City Council will be considering an amendment to the Fifth Avenue South Overlay District. As far as the neighborhood plans, there was discussion of the 10th Street North landscaping and irrigation improvements, which you've heard today. And then the last item she has is parking on 3rd Avenue North. The next steps being design and construction in July of August. So it doesn't look like there was anything that was time sensitive other than the item that Mr. Shugart brought up.
Okay. The only thing, the one I was looking at is at the very end of the last sentence on page 5, where it talks about crab bylaws.
Oh, I'm sorry.
They
I didn't
didn't-
see page 5.
If I can paraphrase it, they really didn't like our suggestion that maybe we should ask them to have a joint meeting once a year. But what it calls for in the last sentence is for our chair would attend a CRA meeting and discuss our request for a joint meeting. So if I understand that, it would be up to our chair to go to them at one of their meetings and request, at some point in time, that we have a joint meeting and maybe propose a date, or let them propose a date to where we have a joint meeting.
Right, so that was, Anita and I have been in discussions about that. I think if this board decides that that's necessary or wanted, then we'll have a discussion on that.
Okay.
I do know the past chair, who happens to be here. I think Quimby did that one, she did one. You did a CRA report as the chair, or you did a report to the CRA as chair of the CRAB. Anita and I have had conversations about that. I reviewed the Quimby's presentation, and to be honest, I let Anita know that I don't feel that that's in the best use of the CRA's time or the CRAB's time. And the reason for that is because every one of our meetings is televised and recorded, and they get an outline of every single one of our meetings from Anita, exactly what we discussed and what we recommended. So I said I'm open to any clarification they may need, but in the interest of everyone's time, I don't see that would be like a monthly and maybe we're in discussions now. We may talk to Mr. McCabe as well, just to make sure we're helping them along the best we can, but that was kind of my feedback to Anita. Anita and I are going back and forth on what the CRA may want us to do, but I'm always open to any time that we would want to have maybe a workshop or something. I'll be happy to go in front of the CRA and request that on behalf of the board, so.
Yeah, thank you.
So do I hear a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Do I hear a second?
I'll second it.
Can we do an all in favor, Ally? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
Good morning and welcome to the City Council Workshop, Friday, May 20th, 2022. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Councilmember Blankenship,
Here?
Councilmember Chrisman,
Here.
Councilmember Hutchison,
Here.
Councilmember Perry,
Here.
Councilmember Petronoff,
Here.
Vice Mayor McCabe,
Here.
Mayor Heitman.
Here. Please stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Setting the agenda. Do we have any changes to the agenda from staff? Great. Council? Any changes? Do I have a motion to approve the agenda as set?
Motion to approve the agenda.
Second.
I have a motion by Vice Mayor and a second by Councilmember Chrisman. All in favor, signed by aye.
Aye. Aye.
Opposed? Passes unanimously. Takes us to public comment. And if you would like to speak before council, there are speaker registration forms in the back of the room that can be filled out and given to the clerk. And we do have one announcement, and that would be
The city manager and the city attorney and council members and the mayor. Go ahead.
So yes, I have the public comment today. So we actually have 3 birthdays that have, actually 4 birthdays that have occurred this week and next week, and we wanted to do a quick little celebration this morning in honor of all 4 of their 29th birthdays. Starting with our mayor, happy birthday, Vice Mayor McCabe, and Councilor Perry, and our Director of Finance, Gary Young. So the fire chief is here, and I've been advised we can't light candles. I'm joking, that's just an excuse for not being able to find matches. But I think, it's appropriate if we can all just start with the happy birthday song.
Oh, no.
All right? Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to everyone. Happy birthday to you. So, understanding that someone never wants to wear a hat, we have 3 and 4 of you. So, yes. So I think the finance director is, yes.
I make a motion.
I make a motion for Gary.
And Councilman Perry.
I second that, and I second Councilmember Perry.
And Vice Mayor.
There you go.
Oh, there we go.
No.
The giant.
Yes, let's have the mayor, the vice mayor, and
Yes.